And welcome back to part two of this week's mailbag, everybody. Um, if you listened to last night's recap, I lied. I said we'd be at full strength today, and we are apparently not. Garrett could not be joining us today. He was here for part one of the mailbag. Snell is in for part two, but Garrett did pass along some answers for us. So without wasting much more time, we're just going to dive right in this week, and Snell will read off the first question, which will be going to me, and then we'll go around the horn as always.
Per usual. So, question one comes from Brian, and Brian asks opinions on Tortorella's comments about players not knowing how to take hits. I'm sure this is going to spark a debate between Snail and Garrett, and I have a feeling I'm going to be taking Flowbro's side. Unfortunately, Garrett's not here to put on the boxing gloves and have a chat about this, but I'll pass it over to Robbie and he'll give you his thoughts.
So you had to kind of put some context on this that it's coming from John Tortorella, an older school kind of player, and I would almost argue that they know less about making hits than taking hits. You don't, I mean, hard hits anymore. You have to, I mean, the game's so fast, you just don't know. It seems like they're catching more guys illegally than they are legally when they're trying to lay a big hit. Another example, though, is also to stick with the Penguins here is John Ludwig delivering a big hit in his first NHL game, and in the process, concussing himself because he did not make the hit correctly. Taking hits, I mean, there's definitely an art to it, to doing getting to the point where you're not being injured every time you get hit, or putting yourself in a position that you're not making yourself vulnerable. Now, again, if a guy makes an illegal hit, there's not much you can do about that. That is what it is. But that happens, and hopefully the proper justice is doled out for that. But as for not being able to take hits, I don't know. You don't hear many guys necessarily being injured um, off just normal everyday hits. I still think guys are uh, brought up with contact. Again, with your peewees and stuff, you don't get a lot of contact. But going through juniors and stuff, they go through their fair share of contact. Now the game is so fast that the hitting has changed, but I don't necessarily know that they don't know how to take hits. Maybe in John Tortorella's eyes they do because he's an old school guy, but in my opinion, I think it's more of an issue if people don't know how to duel out hits properly without injuring themselves or injuring someone else. But as for taking hits, there's nothing that's really stuck out to me that um, makes me think that they no longer that players don't know how to take hits. Question number two from Brian. This one's going over to Snail here. Brian asks, I recently saw someone say that Prime Malkin may have been the most unstoppable force they've ever witnessed playing hockey. And someone also commented on the post saying that he's the third best player of his generation. And there's a big gap to fourth. Brian's saying it's Crosby, Ovechkin, and then Malkin.
And I wholeheartedly agree with this. Evgeny Malkin, and this was a question on the last mailbag, and there was a question regarding maybe him being, I think my words were second fiddle to Sid, and maybe does he get lost in the shuffle a bit with the Sid Ovi rivalry? I'm telling you that, like, when he's retired and they're looking back on years past, there's going to be people coming out of the woodwork saying, "Well, why weren't people higher on Evgeny Malkin?" And looking at go watch his highlights on YouTube. I have a couple of things I wanted to read off here, just to kind of further back my not only agreement with him being, maybe the third best of this generation with Sid Novi, but I mean, he's one of the best Russian players of all time. If you think about all of the amazing Russian players to have graced the game, both on North American soil and internationally, uh, the dominance is like the one word I would use to describe Gino. So his NHL totals we have here in 1,088 games played. He has 481 goals. We're looking at, if he catches fire again, he could. I mean, we're talking this guy's in the 500 club for goals. 769 assists. He's over a point a game player in the NHL. He has 1,250 NHL points. Russian players all time. It's a short list of active NHL players who are among the greats. It goes Alexander Ovechkin, Evgeny Malkin, and then Evgeny Malkin has surpassed the names of the likes of Sergei Fedorov, Alexander Mogilny, Alexei Kovalev, Pavel Datsuk, Ilya Kovalchuk, Alexei Yashin, Pavel Bure, Sergei Zubov, Nikita Kucherov, and Artemi Panarin are points wise. Artemi Panarin has 698, and Kucherov's got 773, and Evgeny Malkin is up there in the 1200s. So just a little bit of I don't know, some data to back that this guy is. I mean, I said before, if Sid wasn't in the league, there would be a Evgeny Malkin craze, and I think there would be a storyline between the Penguins and Caps still being the rivalry just having to do with Malkin and Ovi instead of Sid. Remember Sid or not Sid? Remember Malkin also won a Conn Smythe. He's got 3 cups to his name. I mean, I could go on and on. I could pump the tires of I have all the time in the world to pump the tires of Evgeny Malkin, but I don't think I really need to say a whole lot more. Robbie, you got anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, just numbers wise, it pretty much says it all. In terms of Russian hockey players, he's probably number 2 to Ovechkin easily. Again, he still has years to add to those numbers. He's going to have 500 goals, maybe by the end of this year, depending on how the scoring goes the rest of this season, if not early next season. I mean, he's going to have 3 cups, Conn Smythe, Hart Trophy, Rocket, Art Ross. I mean, he has basically everything. It's nothing. I think it almost to a point now where and I kind of feel the same with Crosby, that anything he does, while great, is just okay. He did it. He's been doing that for 20 years, and it doesn't take anything away from him, obviously. But it's kind of like when you say guys like McDavid and Kucherov, like they're just the shiny new toy that can do that kind of stuff. And Malkin and Crosby and Ovechkin are still incredible. It's just there's an expectation there that you don't see with anybody else.
Absolutely, I agree. The shiny new toys definitely take a little bit of shine, but if there had been no generational talents coming into the league, Evgeny Malkin would still be putting up highlights. Unstoppable force, I think, is a great word to describe him because I think I said it in the last mailbag, although I was absent for it. He he's been sneaky tough. He's a big body. He's not like the heaviest. Like he's not thick like Sid is. He's kind of built like Kevin Durant, but
Yeah.
he dude, when he gets a burr in his saddle, dude, that guy he's a bull out there. He just dangles through players' triangles. He's got this finesse with his hands, but he'll also run you through the boards and he'll take a two-handed slash to the tops of your skates. I love Malkin. I got to get off the I could spend the whole pod talking about how he's great and maybe underappreciated by not just Penguins fans but hockey fans everywhere. And with that, we will move on here to a question that would be directed at Garrett, who is wasn't able to make it today. So I'm gonna have Robbie read off his answer. The question to Garrett being from Brian again, and he says, "I'm curious what you boys think about this whole situation in Chicago. I think the internet grabbed the info and turned it into something it's not, but Chicago does have a history of hiding secrets, so who knows? The rumors are wild, and yeah, like." The internet grabbed info and turned it into something. What's new?
Yeah, yeah, for real. Just typical online rumors there. But here's what Garrett said. And Garrett said, "Never believed for 1 second that Corey Perry was having inappropriate relations with Connor Bedard's mother, and that has not been confirmed. But whatever he did seems pretty bad. I'll leave speculation to the social media." And then in quotes, he puts sleuths. And I'll add on here. I think at this point, we're pretty much aware that he admitted to an alcohol problem. He's going to be checking himself into rehab. So, yeah, I guess in light of what we know now, it's kind of trashy that those rumors came out, especially toward an 18-year-old. That I mean, I mean, what's an 18-year-old going to say? I mean, they're nothing. I mean, just put him in a very tough position as a rookie and the face of one of the signature franchises in the NHL. But kudos to him for not diving into any of that, just kind of letting it take its course. And Chicago didn't help its cause with its past, and two, kind of just like putting up a smokescreen the entire time with like how they handled it with like very tight-lipped secrecy that they kind of let the rumors fester as well, which is a failure on their part toward their future superstars. So, well on Connor Bedard, and hope that Corey Perry gets the help he needs going forward.
All right, let's see. Going back to Robbie here with another question from Brian, and he says, when you or when given a penalty shot, would you like to be able to have the choice to take it or go on the power play?
I guess that depends on who's shooting. With the Penguins power play right now, I'm probably going to just be like, might as well just send out a one-on-one with a goalie just to hope for the best. I always kind of thought about this. I think your best odds are going to be one-on-one. I just think that you have to take a chance. I mean, you're trying your entire game to create breakaways for your offense. Power play, yeah. I mean, if you have a power play that is money, like Tampa Bay's, like maybe, but even then, I still like my odds better going one-on-one with a goalie and just trying to rip one by him. Again, like if it's a guy like Stamkos that's getting the penalty shot, I'm probably going to take that 10 times out of 10. If it's a fourth line plug, maybe I take my odds with my superstars out there, but I really think your one-on-one with a goalie is going to be a better odds. I like to see somebody try to like math it out to see if they can figure out exactly what the odds are, what the best decision would be. But if you're the Penguins, I don't care who's shooting. I'm probably taking the penalty shot right now just because the power play is so dreadful. But I think if I was a coach, if that role ever came into play, I'd be taking the penalty shot. I like my odds in that situation more so than a 2-minute power play. Question number 5, sticking with Brian here and going back to Snail. Have there been any takes on what changes could help the power play get going that you agree with? Rob Rossi says replacing Erik Karlsson for Chris Letang, and Jesse Marshall says the goal line needs to be the focus. Work the back of the net and stop with the perimeter passing. Makes it too easy for opposing teams.
Well, let's be honest. The power play is low-hanging fruit at this point.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a guy like, I'm sorry, like Rob Rossi's a great, like I love reading his stuff, but when you have Rob Rossi trying to tell you what the power play should do, that is a bad sign that you have these guys that, I mean, everyone's chiming in right now on what should be done to the power play. And this whole talk of like put Letang back on, take Karlsson off. This is the issue that I was worried about having, because I said it when they brought Karlsson in. This didn't work in San Jose with him and Burns, two great puck moving offensive defensemen. There wasn't enough puck. It created more problems, and Burns got shipped to Carolina. And we're having that exact same issue right now. Maybe not identical to what San Jose was going through. You can pick apart that statement all you want, but we're having conversations of, well, who do we put on the power play? We need to have, I think if anything right now, the Penguins need to just simplify, and easier said than done. It's easy for me sitting on my couch at home, drinking 4 beers saying, yeah, you got to simplify things. Like I get it. It's like everyone's doing it right now. But one thing that I observe is the power play is clicking very slow, and I think that's a symptom of being out of sync. I think that's a symptom of not trusting the person you're passing it to or the person that you're intending to pass it to. I think there's a hesitancy there that is costing them even 1, maybe 2 seconds, and in the NHL, that's too much time. Like that's everyone's going to read that. The other thing that I observe is that there's a lack of one-timer options, and on the power play, they just played Tampa Bay, who always has a one-timer option, and their power play, despite their record, wins and losses, their power play is always clicking. You have Stamkos on the half wall, Kucherov opposing him on the other one. You got two one-timer options. You have the right shot in Braden Point on the bumper position. You got a guy down low behind the net, and then you got Hedman up top, who's dishing, and he's always open for a long wrister from the point, or like a one timer from Stammer. They have one timer options, and the one timer is effective because, one, it's a hard blast. Two, because it's quick. You're not dusting the puck off. It's a bang bang play. The Penguins typically have a lack of one-timer options. They usually got Malkin down there and on the half wall down on his dot, and then sometimes they'll have Gensel or Sid on the other one, which you typically have a right shot there, but they're lefties. Sid's always kind of down below, typically by the goal net. Actually, they don't really use the bumper position at all, and when they do, he looks confused. The passes are always coming behind him, and it makes them have to make an extra pass. I'm so sick of seeing the cross seam passes where they get a perfect opportunity to shoot, but they dust it off, and then they try to pass it through the middle of the ice, and it gets picked off, or a stick gets in the lane. It's just, I mean, it gets my blood boiling. It seems that it's overcomplicated. You can see them overthinking in real time out there. I think they just go to a simpler, have as many one-timer options. I don't care if it's Carlson. I don't care if it's Rust, who you got down on the half wall. You have right shots. Rust was in that before he got hurt in the game against Tampa. He was rifling the one-timers. He can clearly put it on net. It doesn't need you need someone maybe in front of the net too. One-timers, net front presence, and a little bit more. I don't want to say urgency, but just you need to figure it out so you can be snapping it around without even really having to think of who you're passing it to. And that doesn't come. That's easier said than done. That doesn't come easily. That comes when you have chemistry and built up trust with the players you're out there with. So it's a mess. It's truly a mess, and it's the bane of the Penguins' existence right now. It's hard to watch. Robbie, I'll pass it back over to you if you have anything to add on this, but I think we can kind of sum it up that it's just kind of it's a complete mess right now.
Not really anything else to say, but a complete mess, right? I mean, we're kind of running out of adjectives to kind of explain it at this point, because anything that's been said the past almost month now has basically been said. There's not much left to empty the tank there. But I look at what Tampa Bay did last night on the Kucherov goal. Just quick, timely passing and getting it over to one of the best goal scorers in the NHL again. It's simple. I mean, you just got to make simple plays right now. I think not that the camel's back hasn't broken at this point, but the 5-on-3 late in that game, despite the game being over, I mean, even if it's just a goal to get some kind of confidence going, they come up. 5-on-3 for almost a minute and just come up empty-handed. Just a microcosm of the power play right now, and until something gets changed, it's just going to continue to be bad. The odds are eventually going to regress a little bit, and they're going to get one that bounces off someone and goes into a net on a power play. It's just how odds and statistics work. But in a long-term plan, it's something fundamentally has to change.
Something must change. That is the motto going forward regarding the Penguins power play. Moving on here to another one of Garrett's questions, and I'll go ahead and read this and take this. I'll read Garrett's answer here. So Brian says, what do you attribute to William Nylander? Whenever I'm reading his name, I say Nylander. What do you attribute to William Nylander being a top-tier player, but Alex being a fringe AHL bottom six guy? For the most part, the siblings that have played in the NHL have been relatively close with on-ice success and talent. Stalls, Sedins, Kachucks, to name a few. And Garrett's answer to that, he says, some athletes can have the greatest physical gifts known to man, but can't process or see the game at an elite level. For Alex, he's played in the NHL, which is already no small feat, but compared to his brother, perhaps he lacks the mental intangibles to, in quotations, put it all together. I have to agree. I think that, they've played together. Obviously, they probably have some chemistry with each other. And like Garrett said, they're both in the NHL. But clearly, one has an intangible to see the game in a certain way that the other one just doesn't have.
Yeah, and again, kind of the same thing with parent or offspring of great all-time great players. Like none of Gretzky's kids are in the NHL. Mario Lemieux's son played a year or two of college hockey, never got close to becoming a pro player. And that there's a lot of great hockey players in the world that never will see the ice in an NHL game, let alone AHL game. Even there's a lot of great players that would skate laps around 98% of hockey players that'll never take a shift at the NHL level. It's just, and the same goes for every sport. It's not just hockey. It's just professional athletes. It all looks so easy when they're doing it, but the talent level of professional athletes and ever growing is just exceedingly absurd. So, yeah, I mean, some guys got it, some guys don't. That's it.
Yep, there really sometimes doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. Some guys just, I don't know, it's brain chemistry, it's psychology. Sometimes it just, some people are just, as they say, built different.
Yep.
All right, so the next question, this is going over to Robbie here, I think, and Brian asks, do you think the good play of Ned helps Jarzen the sense of motivation to keep his net? When DeSmith was the backup, he had to know he was never going to be outplayed by him, but with Ned, it's a legitimate possibility.
I think it does. I mean, again, Jari has always had okay backups, but I think Nedeljkovic has been the best backup. Again, Jari never came up playing with Fleury behind him like Matt Murray did. Never had that guy pushing him. But to go, it doesn't seem like any accident that Jari's play has improved as Nedeljkovic has been getting more and more starts. Every start Nedeljkovic goes out there, he plays a pretty good game. Doesn't win them all, but he's quite easily the best backup option they possibly could have got on the market. And I definitely think it pushes Jari a little bit. Again, Jari, we know Jari has a talent. We know that he can be that goalie. And again, some of that talent is finally starting to surface here. He's finally healthy this year. Some of those early struggles are out of the way. But having a guy out there to push you, even if there's no direct competition, has to help, especially at a position as important as goaltending, where a good goaltender can carry you, as we saw last year with the Panthers, like Sergei Bobrovsky, all the way to a cup final. But it can also break you, as we saw with the Penguins back in 2022, when down to their third string goalie fell to the Rangers in 7 games in a series they should have won if they had even their backup in. So I definitely think having Nedeljkovic out there and performing well definitely pushes Jari, and Nedeljkovic is just confident in his own right. So it's great to have those two guys as a goaltending combo right now, because they've been basically the MVP of the team these past few weeks, just getting them points in these games where they're going to overtime. But yeah, I definitely think it's helped Jari at least settle in and become more confident in himself.
I wanted to add one thing quickly that I think that the internal competition for the net, I think historically when you look at teams, it's never been a hindrance on the team. It's only provided better play out of both goalies. And I think the last time that there was internal competition with two goaltenders in Pittsburgh was when Murray was getting his shot and Fleury was in net. And I believe a coach also got fired that year halfway through the season after underperforming, and they went on to win 2 cups back to back. So just a little food for thought, Robbie.
Absolutely. Question, I believe we're at question 8 here. This is from Brian. Who is a realistic player we could target that has a Hornqvist-type game? He was a huge part of the nucleus of success on and off the ice.
Yep, this is something that I've been racking my brain about since Dubas took over, actually, thinking that net front presence has always been so important in the game of hockey, having a pest up there. And you don't need a Sean Avery or a Brad Marchand making noise in front of a goalie. You need Patric Hornqvist, I think, was one of the best at his position, because he very he didn't very often take a bad penalty in front of the net. He would annoy the goaltender and get under the skin as much as possible. Actually, historically, I think Hornqvist was always the one drawing a penalty. People would take liberties on him, and his prowess in front of the net would actually benefit the Pens not only in the moment, but sometimes drawing a penalty. And the Penguins have sorely missed this. I think Sid has kind of tried to be a net front guy. Gensel, Carter at times. I don't really want Sid and Gensel in front of the net, in front of 95-mile-an-hour slap shots.
Yeah.
And Carter just doesn't have the hand-eye to be like a Pavelski where he's flipping the stick over to get those tips in. I don't think you can't rely on that long term. Yes, he's a big body. Zahorna is a big body, but a net front player is like a niche type of player in the NHL. You can't just rely on like size and stature to be successful at that position. Yes, you get in the goalie's eyes, but there's a finesse to it, and you see the best in the game at doing it. They're kind of like independent contractors. You hire them for that net front prowess. So to this question, they're not getting a Pavelski. Pavelski's in the twilight of his career, and he's really making a living still in front of the net. I thought that JVR, James Van Riemsdyk, maybe this offseason, he could have been a good option for the Pens. He's a veteran. He's getting a little bit slower. He was a high draft pick a long time ago. He's kind of got that nose for the net front presence. But Boston got him. So with him kind of out of the way, I always wondered about Alex Chason. He was a former Capital, played in Vancouver a little bit. I think he signed a PTO with the Bruins this year, but he was released. He doesn't have the kind of the piss and vinegar that like a Hornqvist would bring, but he was parked in front of the net successfully on both those teams, and he was never necessarily lighting the lamp, but he was a decent net front option. He's an unrestricted free agent currently right now. He's 33. And the one guy I always wondered, depending on where things went for the Montreal Canadiens, was a guy like Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher, he's a feisty net front guy. He's not a sniper by any means, but he kind of has the Hornqvist intangibles. And with the Montreal Canadiens kind of going through a retool, rebuild, maybe a short-term rebuild, I guess you'd call it, some of their veterans over the past couple of years being sold off and traded, I've always wondered if maybe the Penguins would look at him to kind of provide maybe some third-line angst and a great net front option, I think, on the power play, because he's a skilled enough guy that I think you could put him there and he could make sweet music on the first power play with the Pens. And with Montreal maybe willing to maybe retain a bit on his salary or get something worked out there. We'll have to see come closer to trade deadline, but those are two guys that kind of came to mind first and foremost. Robbie, you got anyone that I'm not thinking of off the top of your head?
Nah, not really. I mean, yeah, there's going to be options out there. It's just going to come down to, again, a lot of the guys you mentioned are on teams that aren't going to be sellers at the deadline, like Pavelski and Van Riemsdyk. So, I mean, there's going to be pieces out there. It just depends on, hey, it takes two to dance. So we'll see what Kyle Dubas can come up with.
Indeed, two to dance. Let's see here. Question number 9 from Tony Gale. Tony Gale says, this power play is starting to make my blood boil. An embarrassment of riches that cannot get the puck over the line. Something has got to change before Christmas. My suggestion, get Zahorna in front of the net. We need new direction and new techniques. Too predictable. And I'll pass it over to you, Robbie, to read off Garrett's answer.
Yeah, so Tony, I don't think you're the only one that's a little frustrated with the power play at this point. So here's what Garrett had to say about this. They were 0-4 in Tampa on Wednesday night. I believe 0 for their last 33 power play attempts over the course of 12 games. That is laughably horrible for this collection of talent. This season is quickly approaching unsalvageable territory. I'm not typically one to say fire Sullivan, trade Crosby, but if this pattern persists, I don't see why it won't hurt in the why it won't in the short, and I don't see why it won't in the short term. We're easily looking back-to-back years with no postseason. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier, kind of running out of adjectives to say about this power play, but Tony, I got to agree with you that it's way too predictable. I think that's been well established. Zahorna, again, I think people, I mean, you can't just, big body, huge, but it takes a special player to play in front of the net in a power play. You can't just go and stick out like a Ryan Reeves or a Radim Zahorna. Now, Zahorna, I would say, has more skill or stick talent than a guy like um, Ryan Reeves, but Patric Hornqvist was obviously a special breed of player. And again, you're not just going to pick a Patric Hornqvist out of nowhere. He was just a special one of a kind. Only a few like him come around in a generation, but like a Pavelski or something like that, those guys don't just fall off trees. And Zahorna, a big body, if you're just putting him out there to hope something bounces off of him, then yeah, give it a shot. But it's more than a big body out in front of goal. And unfortunately, the Penguins don't seem to have a guy like that currently in the fold at any level. So that's pretty much it there.
Robbie, I'm going to put you on the spot here quickly. Garrett says he's not typically one to say fire Sullivan, trade Crosby, but if this pattern persists, he doesn't see why it won't in the short, in the short term. So with that being said by Garrett, Dubas is not Hextall. He is a mover and a shaker. He has gone back to the well with Sid, Gino, Letang, adding Carlson, a generational talent in his own right. He wants to squeeze every ounce of competitiveness out of this core. He said he wants to bring a cup back here. With those promises from Dubas, you'd have to think that it's only a matter of time before he goes out and makes a shakeup to the roster, the coaching staff. To what extent, I'm not going to go out and say, but you'd have to bet that before he decides to start selling off pieces and become a seller at the deadline and they throw this season away, you'd think that he's going to do something to try to shake things up. Would you not?
I mean, every indication, not just from what he's been saying, but from his history in Toronto as well. And one thing I do want to say, and I think that people need to get it out of their head, is that someone like any of the big five are going to be moved. I don't think you're going to see Crosby, Malkin, Letang, or Carlson literally moved at any point. I just think that people need to get that out of their head, whether it's in season, definitely not in season, because that's too much. That's too difficult of a trade to make in season. And I just don't, that the plan is to bring another cup to Pittsburgh with those guys here. That trade's not being made. I'm sorry. Malkin and Letang are still making way under contract value for what they produce, and Crosby's still making way under his contract value for what he produces. Those guys aren't moving. Now, if we want to talk Rust or Gensel, whether or not he resigns, we can have that decision another time. But unless things go well off the rails, I still don't think the Penguins are going to be eliminated or anywhere close to eliminated by the trade deadline. So I think that they're not going to wait to the trade deadline, but Dubas is going to do something here either right at Christmas or right before Christmas to shake things up and try to figure something out.
One more for you, Robbie, and that is if and this is like a break glass in case of scenario. This is just kind of for hypothetical's sake. If we were going to move one of our right shot defensemen in Letang or Carlson, who are you moving and why? Gun to your head has to happen. If you make this move, it's a guaranteed playoff spot. You've looked into the crystal ball, but one has to go. Who are you moving between Letang and Carlson?
Probably Erik Karlsson. I think he gets the greater return. I know I hate to say that, but I think he gets the greater return in between the two. I think Karlsson just viewed as they're similar defensemen, but Karlsson's just viewed as just a slight tier above Chris Letang. Whether it's fair or not, but that's just my thinking.
I mean, Carlson's won like Norris's and like he was a cap. I mean, I think Letang on another team, almost any other team with his tenure and the way he's played, Letang is like a captain. I think he could be a captain on any other team. Yeah. Okay. Just curious.
Yep.
We'll move on.
Oh yeah, question. Oh wait, no.
Or I think this is for you, right?
We're going back to it. Yep.
Question 10 here from our pal from across the pond, Kim Larson. Kim says, in European sports, the winning team gets 3 points. Would you like to implement that in the NHL? So a win is 3 points, OT win is 2 points, and an OT loss is a mere 1 point.
So the 3-point system has long been argued at the NHL or for the NHL, and I've always been a fan of it. I've always supported it. I think that, yeah, because again, 3-on-3, it's still hockey, but I mean, that's a basically advanced skills competition, and a shootout is just a straight skills competition. A shootout, yeah, I would go 3 for an outright win. Automatic 1 point each for getting to overtime, and then the second point goes to the winner. And then an odd thing that I would put in here for the shootout, each team gets a point. The shootout winner gets the third point, but that third point goes into like a tiebreaker bank. So if the two teams would get like the Penguins, yeah. So the Penguins and Flyers on Saturday night goes to overtime. Each team gets a point just for going to overtime. They play for the second point. One, I think that takes away the need to limit skating backwards and all this stuff they're talking about doing to make it go quicker, or to make overtime more offensive and stuff like that. I think the playing straight up for that extra point, knowing that goes directly into the standings, is helpful. Then in the shootout, each team still gets a point, but they fight for the second point. But that second point goes into a bank that can be used as a tiebreaker at the end of the season, or something like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tiebreaker, because if a team doesn't go to shootouts or something like that, well, then yeah. So, yeah, I would definitely be a fan of a 3-point system. I've long argued that, and yeah, nothing's changed my mind on that. Question 11 for Brian, from Brian for Snail. I think Snail's tinfoil hat theory is awesome. Also, the first person I thought of to replace Reardon was Sergei Gonchar, but he's with Vancouver with Tocchet, so Trevor Daley would be a good alternative. And he also said Sergei Fedorov came to mind, but I'm going to think that is a long shot of a long shot.
Well, you never know with Malkin being there. You never know what if. Yeah, I think it. Why not pick up at this point? Why not pick up the phone and just start calling around the league at historic players that maybe had a time with the Penguin and just start asking them, "Hey, what do you think?" So I would argue, Robbie, that Fedorov, it's the Penguins, it's Malkin, it's Sid, it's Lemieux is up top still. Their reach, you never know how far their reach is if they're looking for help. I really like what Vancouver is doing with their coaching staff. You have Rick Tocchet behind the bench, head coach. You've got Adam Foote running the defense, Sergei Gonchar helping with the defense as well, and also the power play. It's former players that have won and have gotten it done in their career, and these aren't fourth line bums that are have a knack for coaching. These are players coming in to help with just overall knowledge and tricks of the trade in a game where they were very successful themselves. I'm curious with this power play thing. It's gotten so ridiculous, and like I said before, it's low-hanging fruit. But it's at what point something has to change. And I'm curious, you have Mario Lemieux still within the organization, although at not the role that maybe he used to be. And let's be honest, he seemed like a fairly hands-off owner. But like, dude, at what point is you call up Mario Lemieux and you say, dude, can you come down here and just lay eyes on practice? And one thing I've said about the power play is it looks like they're thinking a little too hard out there. Get Mario Lemieux down and calm some of these guys down and say, look, dude, it's not that hard. You got 4 Hall of Famers out here on the ice at one time. Let's go back to some instinctual plays. Let's go back to what you're comfortable with and what you've excelled at in your careers. Maybe just a little nudge from someone like him. Maybe get him in there helping. I've also wondered about what a guy like Kevin Stevens is doing right now, or Uh, I don't know. There have been so many successful players like Rick Kehoe. I don't know, just some of these players that had success in Pittsburgh and are beloved by the fans, and they know what they're doing. Like, why? At what point do you maybe pull what Vancouver's doing and you give one of these former successful players a call? And I don't know how the money works out with like hiring them and what their total role would be. I think of a guy like Adam Oates, who's kind of like an independent contractor. People hire him to kind of look over their tape, and he kind of simplifies their game. And a lot of players have been having a lot of success working with Adam Oates. I think he runs his own company right now, so he's not exactly for hire out there for like a team, but in the same vein that what he kind of does, some of these players that are still involved, former players, alumni that are still involved in hockey, I would get creative. I would think I would reach out and just be like, can we hire you to come take a look at our practice, look at our tapes, and just talk with these players and maybe give us some tips and tools to get this back on track. Let's see here. Question number 12 coming from Kim Larson. This is a Garrett question again, so I'll read it and I'll give you Garrett's answer here. Kim asks, if William Nylander doesn't agree with Toronto on a new contract, would he be a player we should consider? I know it's early days, but I'm planning ahead, and free agent signings are always fun. Garrett responds with more Nylander chatter, huh? If the Penguins can make the cap situation work, but he says they won't, and they still need to re-sign their own elite winger in Gensel, then absolutely, the Penguins should inquire about a 27-year-old righty who has 459 points in 543 games played. Robbie, what do you think?
Yeah, again, it all comes down to the money, and with Gensel there, and again, Toronto's going to do everything in their power to sign him. So I don't see it as a
include overpaying him probably.
Yeah. Again, you're gonna the hometown discount will apply only to Toronto. The open market, he's going to command just boo bucks, especially if he keeps up what he's doing now. So I don't see again. Yeah, I mean, if he goes on the market, everybody's going to make the phone ring, but I don't see it as feasible in Pittsburgh.
Agreed. All right, and our last question to wrap up this mailbag comes from Kim as well, and he says, would you agree that Marcus Pettersson has been one of the more underrated players on the Penguins roster this season?
Marcus Pettersson been unbelievable this season. Again, he's been slowly improving for years now, but I mean, he is the new Brian Dumoulin, basically. Does not get nearly enough credit for what he does. Doesn't score a lot of goals, register a lot of points. He'll chip in every once in a while there. Great chemistry with his country mate, Erik Karlsson. Just, I don't have enough superlatives to really put into words what Pettersson's done this year. His contract is one of the best bargains in the NHL right now, and the Penguins need every cent they can get. Just fantastic. I can't really do much complaining about Marcus Pettersson. Just phenomenal season he's putting together.
Agreed.
All righty. That is 13 questions done and dusted. This is part 2 of our mailbag this week. The Penguins are back in action tomorrow night, tonight, I guess, when this comes out, in Florida against the Panthers. I will not be around, so it'll be, if he feels up to it, it'll be Snail running recap. I don't think many of us have very good or very optimistic about tomorrow night's game against the defending Eastern Conference champions, but crazier things have happened in the NHL. As for the mailbag, obviously the question will go out Sunday from Garrett, and we will tally them up. And I'm assuming we'll get another 2 mailbag segment in next week. So now, you got anything?
Yeah, game against Florida is Patric Hornqvist night. I think
it is. Yes,
which will be awesome. Since he left Pittsburgh, you haven't really heard much from him. And he didn't play most of last year due to concussions, which forced him into an earlier retirement than he would have wanted for himself. He was an
Absolutely.
absolute warrior. I think he's going to actually be up in the box with the commentators, I think, for at some point. And I think that'll be awesome. Whether there's an outcome or not, it'll be awesome to see Horny and see him interacting with maybe his old teammates again. It'll be cool to hear him talk, and maybe he'll give a little bit of insight on his on just getting something from him. He's a very outspoken person, but for an outspoken person, we don't know a lot about how things have kind of gone for him post Penguins career. So I'm really looking forward to that game. Not really looking forward to that game in the sense that the Florida Panthers are going to be out for blood and taking chunks out of whoever they can. Kind of a decimated Penguins roster that I think that a lot of players are iffy with Russ being injured and Raquel still out, and Letang kind of took a little bit of a scary spill at one point in the last game against Tampa. You're hoping that everybody's is okay, but I mean, this Florida team, they play for keeps, and the Penguins, they are a team that could certainly rise to the occasion and play button down defense and maybe take 2 points out of there. But I could also see them being pushed around, bullied. You're going to have Sid dropping the gloves with somebody, which you never really want, and it could be an all out bloodbath. So despite the outcome of the game, it'll be really cool to see our old friend Patric Hornqvist not disturbing the net front, but maybe making a little bit of noise in the press box with the announcers.
Absolutely. Definitely going to be good to see Horny again. Hopefully he's healthy, happy, and enjoying retirement. Definitely a guy that has more than earned it, and I'm sure that there will be regret in future years when he's banged up, but he can go into whatever surgery he needs with 2 rings on his fingers and plenty of adoring fans. You never hear anything bad about the guy, so definitely nice. Obviously, Florida definitely planned it like that. Nashville was his original home, but he definitely made his biggest impact in Pittsburgh. He has a Stanley Cup clinching goal, and then he was really good for Florida until last year. Obviously, everything just catches up when you play that style. Again, he played a long time too. It wasn't like he beat himself up for 5 or 6 years and only got a short career. Long career, and the beating he took is really impressive that he played that long. But it'll be good to see old Patric Hornqvist back tomorrow night. Hopefully, he gets to spend some time with the boys on Sportsnet Pittsburgh and with his Florida family as well. So it'll be it'll be good. It'll be good to see him again and be honored for his contribution to the game.
100% looking forward to it. Well, I think that's about it
Yeah.
from what I got. So mailbag coming out again. Question goes out on Sunday, and yeah, man, curious. I guess one thing really quick. Depending on how this game in Florida goes, is that the end of their road trip?
Well, kind of. They do go home Tuesday then, but then they have a back to back, which the second of that back to back is in Montreal, and then they have at Toronto on Saturday. So they
Mm.
go home for 1, back on the road for 2. Um, so yeah, it's a road heavy month, especially early in December. It does even out a little bit in the second half, but definitely going to be a little road weary here until the week after next.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for maybe any changes happening depending on how some of these games go.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. See you again next week. Go Pens.